that better?
Yeah, that works.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry, Chair.
Okay, so have we received any apologies?
No, Chair, I haven't received any apologies.
Great, thank you. So item 2 on the agenda, we just have to go to our declarations of interest and ask if there are any declarations. I can't see or hear any, so we'll assume that's fine. No declarations of interest. So we now just turn to the last meeting, the minutes, and ask members of the committee if they can just go through the minutes and suggest any points of accuracy or matters arising. Councillor Zavreddin.
Thank you, Chair. A question around one of the actions captured in the minutes, action for Andrew Hunter and Stuart McKellar regarding exploring the options, whether there are any possibilities of claiming costs against the pension fund delaying the 21-22. My question is, would this be captured somewhere to keep track? First of all, have you got any feedback from that action? If not, will this action be captured somewhere so that we can track when we have some feedback on this?
I assume that's the action on page 4.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Action Andrew Hunter and Stuart McKellar, yeah.
I'm able to confirm, Chair, that there is no scope to recover any costs from the pension fund. It has been explored.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. I also wanted to go through the actions as well. If there's anything else there that's outstanding. Any actions arising? So I'm looking at page 5 now, the last one. It was agreed that following the senior management team meeting away day, deep dive into the risk register, some proposals will be brought to the committee on areas that it will be useful for us to assess in further detail. And the action there is Sally Hendrick and Andrew Hunter.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we're now proposing to bring that to the next committee meeting, which I think will be in September.
Okay, thank you. So on that basis, we've covered the actions, I believe, and there are no one more, page 6. Let's have a look. Yes, thank you, Councillor Allen. It was noted that it was common for repeat issues not to be addressed in between audits, and Sally offered to provide a list of repeated assurances with adverse opinions at the next committee meeting for discussion. Sally.
Those are actually included in the report that I'm bringing this evening, and I'll draw attention to those as we go through the report later on the agenda.
Okay, excellent. Thanks very much. Okay, so once again, have we covered all the actions and are we happy with the accuracy of the minutes? I believe we are. So I propose that we accept the minutes. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded, Chair, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Those in favour? Yeah, appears to be unanimous. Thank you very much. So moving to item 4, urgent items of business. Are there any urgent items of business?
I can confirm, Chair, I have not received any in advance.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's move to the main item of business. Item 5, the Internal Audit Annual Assurance Report 2023 to 24. And I'm going to ask Sally Hendrick to present her report.
Thank you, Chairman. So this report is a report that I bring annually to the committee. Under the Accounts and Audits regulations, the council is required to have an adequate and effective internal audit service in place. And on top of that, the public sector internal audit standards require me to produce a written report and an annual opinion, which will be timed to support the annual governance statement, which the committee will receive at the next meeting in July. So you will be receiving my report this evening, which will inform that statement that you'll be looking at next month. So with my report, every year I'm required to provide an opinion, and that opinion is set out on page 13 of the report. And it shows that I've concluded for this year that I'm going to give another partial assurance opinion on the adequacy of the internal control, risk management and governance framework for 23-24, based on the work that we've carried out and the findings that we have from the audits that we've produced. So the main reason for that opinion is the level of or the number of recommendations that we're raising at a major level that is coming through in those partial opinions that we have listed in the table below there, and the number of memos where we're also raising major recommendations, together with the number of repeat areas where we're finding we go and carry out an audit and then we follow that up in the following year and we find that the major recommendations raised have not yet been addressed, and we're still finding that arising this year. So in the section on page 15 onwards, I'm referring here to the significant issues that we have, and I've listed the audits on page 16 onwards, which show where I've found major recommendations, where we've raised major recommendations and what the opinion was, because we do have some areas where we raised a satisfactory opinion, but we did find sort of isolated areas of weakness where we raised major recommendations. So as you'll know, you receive reports from me throughout the year. This annual report has to include everything that we've covered throughout the whole year. So it will include reference to audits where you have already received information on what we've found during the year. So I just thought it would be helpful to draw your attention to those audits where you haven't previously received that in the earlier updates that you received between April and March. So the first one that I would draw your attention to that you haven't seen before would be on page 16, which is the council-wide procurement audit. This came out quite recently with 5 major recommendations in it as listed here. The next one that you haven't seen before is the business continuity follow-up. And this is one where another one of these sort of areas where we are giving an adverse audit opinion, then we go back and visit again and we find there hasn't been any progress. And this one we found there'd been very little actually progress since a year ago when I first raised concerns about this. So we raised 3 recommendations there that were at a major level. The next one is the school places planning audit, which you won't have seen before. And also the trees re-audit, that's another one. The trees re-audit is one where we have previously raised a partial opinion, and we re-audited it this year in full, and we found that there were still issues and raised another partial opinion. The next one that you haven't seen before is the establishment audit, which was generally satisfactory. It was only one very specific area where we found that there was a major issue, and that was where when officers are claiming for mileage, they should be making a standard declaration which includes referencing that they've got proper insurance in place, that their vehicles are roadworthy, and they have a clean licence and so on, and those declarations were often not being applied. And so we have actually raised that as a major recommendation, because that is one of the things that the insurers flagged to us that we should be doing, including this declaration when they carried out a risk management review of our grey fleet a few years ago. So we need to make sure that's included. That declaration is on the standard form, but often officers aren't using the standard form that is on our intranet. The next one, supply payments. This was again a sort of isolated matter, and it was to do with supporting documentation for urgent payments, where that's often resting with officers in their email accounts and so on, and not being submitted with the actual urgent payment request. So that was another one where we raised a major recommendation but had a satisfactory opinion. And then similarly, IR35 was also an area where we found sort of an isolated recommendation that we raised at a major level, and that was to do with contracts with agencies and so forth, not clarifying specifically where the tax responsibilities lie. So we thought that was a very significant issue that we should be addressing to protect our own interests as a council. So we've raised that at a major level. And then there are a couple of schools where you wouldn't have seen these before. That School I is one you haven't seen before, School K and School W. But all the other schools you had received that information before in my earlier interim updates. So following on from this, as I mentioned before, there are a number of areas where we are getting the repeat issues around major recommendations not being implemented and them being raised again. So we've sort of identified a number of areas where these major recommendations haven't been addressed. Firstly, either from doing the full audits or by the updates that we've received from managers through the recommendation tracker. So the first one would be the business change support costs, where they're still progressing action to identify the full costs for each project that they're undertaking. And then the next one that we have found where things have not been addressed was the commercial properties. That's now going to be taken forward by the new head of strategic property, who's just taken over. So I've made her aware of that, so she's going to be following that up. Services to schools is another one where the progress is very limited in some areas. And with the supply payments, we had raised partial opinion before on it. Then last year we raised a recommendation that was addressed, but we're picking up again now issues around urgent payments, which, as I just mentioned earlier, is something we wanted to flag up, where we need to make sure we've got the supporting information to support those urgent payments. Community and continuing education, that's another one where the major recommendation is still in progress. That's around developing a clear strategy for the service in the centre. And then there are just, I think, one school here where we found that when we'd carried out the audit last year and we gave a partial assurance, when we've gone back this year, we found that the major recommendation hasn't been addressed. That's just, I suppose, quite unusual these days, actually, because usually when we audit schools, when we go back, we find that they are picking those things up, but there's just one there that hasn't done that. So that's the sort of key things that I wanted to raise around the audits themselves. I wanted to draw your attention to our compliance with public sector internal audit standards, because I'm required to give you assurance on that every year. We had the external assessment back in 2012, and every year we're also required now to provide a sort of internal review of that, which I carried out, and I'm satisfied that we're compliant. In section 5.2, I'm drawing attention to the performance indicators that we have. We received very few client questionnaires back when we issue them. Those that are coming back are showing that people are satisfied with the service that they're getting, but it would be good if we could actually get more client satisfaction surveys back from the auditees to give us a bit more feedback on the service that we're providing. And the delivery times are not as good as I would like them to be, but that really is reflective of the resourcing issues that we have on the team. So the other areas that I wanted to draw your attention to are really around the fraud and irregularity, where the benefits team have given me an update in 9.1 of their progress there, which I include for them every time I provide an update. So that provides the update covering the full year. And as you know, we had which I've already previously reported, we had a successful prosecution on the blue badge from the work that we do on that this year. So that was very good news. So that's largely what I was going to cover in the report that I presented here tonight. I'm very happy to take any questions, but one thing I would like to note is I would like, Chairman, if it's possible, to formally note the contribution that Michelle Woodhatch, my deputy, during 23-24 made to the service, enabling us to deliver as much as we were able to deliver given the limited resources we have. Michelle formally leaves us today. Her last working day was last Friday, and she's now moved on to a job at Ealing. But I would like to thank her for all her assistance during the year, because we wouldn't have been able to progress, particularly the school audits, as well as we did without her assistance.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, I'm sure all the committee members will join me in thanking Michelle Woodhatch for all her sterling work with us, and we wish her every success in her new post. Thank you for the report. I'm sure there's going to be some questions from councillors. I can see the headline is it's another sort of partial fulfillment of requirements. Before we get into the questions and the detail, I do notice that you've got an audit that is good, one which is good. There were no good ones last time, so I guess that's a good thing to point out. Could you tell us where that good audit was carried out?
Actually, I'm quite pleased to say we have another area where we are finding things are all fully addressed, and I would consider that to be good as well. And that's the data indicators, where we had major issues previously, and they've done a fantastic job to turn that around. Together with the new council plan that's been developed, that team have done a sterling job in addressing the issues that we'd previously found. It's a sort of a new officer working on that now, and she's done a fantastic job to improve that. I'm trying to think, actually, to be honest, which is the other area which we had. Oh, yes, it was the discretionary hardship fund payments. These are some small grants that we provide at the council, and we found the controls very good there. Only some minor things to address. Very, very solid, really, the controls in that area.
Okay, thank you. So questions from other members? Councillor Allen.
I'll just come back to the staffing side. So with Michelle leaving, and I know you're short-staffed anyway, have you made any progress in getting the staffing numbers up? Because I know that I can see that the number of audits is down quite a bit this year because you've been understaffed. Is there any progress on that side?
Yes, Michelle left us formally today. A few weeks ago, we did try to recruit for a permanent principal auditor. That must have been probably about February now, and that was not successful. So when I knew that Michelle was leaving, I did try to get some interim cover there. So we were not able to recruit to the sort of internal audit manager level, but I've recruited a temporary principal auditor that's been with us now about 3 weeks so far and is working through the audits. But we still do have vacancies. We've obviously got the vacancy now for Michelle's post, plus we've got a temporary principal auditor. What's happening at the moment is the HR team are looking to try and propose a market premium for the roles that we have to the corporate management team. And I understand that should be going to CMT, to the corporate management team very shortly, because we do need that, I think, to try and attract the candidates that we need to get here to provide the service that we are statutorily required to deliver. It's not a guarantee having the market premium that you're going to get in the right candidates, but I think not having the market premium is pretty much a guarantee that you won't get any suitable applicants. So we look forward to that, and I hope that should go through shortly. As I said, it's beyond my control because that's with the HR department, but I think they're taking that in July to CMT.
Councillor Zaharuddin.
Thank you, Chair. Sally, there are quite a few recommendations, major recommendations you have mentioned in page number 16, 17, and 18. First, I would like to thank you and your team for putting those details together in spite of so many constraints with resources. My question around that is like, are there any additional costs and resources required to address those major recommendations, additional costs or resources needed to address those recommendations?
Well, I suppose that's really probably more of a management decision, really, at each local level as to what resources they might be needing to address those recommendations. But the position is quite concerning around the sort of absent or the lack of progress on some of these areas, and it is something that the corporate management team are very aware of and are taking steps to try and put measures in place to try and develop some sort of improvement plan, I think is the thing, isn't it? To try and address that and identify in particular if there are, say, particular themes of weaknesses, say, for example, around perhaps debt management, budgeting, procurement. Then there'll probably some key themes running through these issues that we're finding and these major points. And that is something that we need to try and identify for the corporate management team to help them identify how they can take this sort of improvement programme forward to try and turn this around, to try and improve the control environment and try and improve the response to the audits and the timeliness of the response to the audits, because sometimes things are getting addressed, but we're having to go through them 2 or 3 times before we get to that point. So we're having to audit them maybe 2 or 3 times just to actually get progress, and that really shouldn't be happening because it should be much more timely. If you raise a major recommendation, then it should be being addressed within months, not years, really. And the corporate management team is well aware of that. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Stuart.
If I may, Chair.
Stuart, please, yes.
Thank you. I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Nasruddin. The issue is about resourcing and additional costs to implement some of these. So it is something I've been discussing with the Chief Executive over the last few weeks. So we are minded to bring the improvements to the internal control environment within the scope of the Council's corporate improvement programme, because that will give it the council-wide focus that it needs. It will identify what resources, if necessary, are required to actually address some of the issues, because as Sally said, there are some cross-cutting themes around understanding of procurement processes. IT developments may be required to address some of the issues. So it's quite complex, lots of things, and it was going to take that council-wide effort to actually achieve it. The Chief Executive and I are in complete agreement that we need to do it. The thing we're working through at the moment is timing, because currently we have the SEND service within the corporate improvement programme, which, as you know, is significant and requires an awful lot of effort. We also have the council-wide procurement within the corporate improvement programme, because we have a new Procurement Act coming in October this year, and that will have an impact across all service areas. So it's a balance around how much we can put in the corporate improvement programme at any one time. But I do think that given the length of time it's taken us as an organisation to get on top of the issues that Sally and her team have been flagging for a few years now, it isn't inevitable. That's what we have to do. It's just at what point we feel we have the capacity as an organisation to deal with it.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. I'm thinking about the external audit, how the partial opinion and the internal audit, will that be fed into the external audit or not?
I suppose that's probably something that KPMG would need to answer, because this year, the 23-24 will feed into KPMG's opinions and whatever they give, because they're now taking over. The 23-24 will be the first year, I think, that KPMG are working on it. So it would be for KPMG, I suppose, to take on board. Generally, I find what happens is that the internal audit findings inform the planning and the extent of work that the external auditors will do. So it will perhaps influence, their risk assessment in terms of their materiality, because whenever they carry out an audit of the financial statements with external auditors, they will be identifying a materiality level, and that will be perhaps influenced by what comes out of the internal audit process. And again, also they receive all the reports that we produce to help them inform their planning and the direction of their audit and the risk assessments that they have. So I think it's really in that respect that it will impact on the external auditors, because they work on a different level to us. They work on materiality, whereas we focus whenever we're auditing anything on that specific service and area that we're looking at, whereas they're looking at the global picture of materiality, which is clearly quite significant for large organisations in materiality levels.
Stuart, you'd like to comment on that?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, if I may just add to what Sally says, she's absolutely right. And you will see the external audit plan for 23-24 at the July meeting of the committee. And there are clear nods to the findings of Sally's got in this report, which feeds into the annual governance statement and into their audit plan. So there is a very clear path.
Okay, I can see one of the attendees online, Andrew, has got their hands raised. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was just to repeat really what Stuart and Sally have said. So it's Andy Cardoza from KPMG, the Director for the External Audit for 23-24. Absolutely take into consideration the work of internal audit, absolutely take into consideration the Head of Internal Audit opinion and the conclusions reached. So it's really important that, as Sally said, that we do go through that. And as Stuart said, we'll be bringing our plan to the next audit committee, where we'll describe and take you through how we've reached our risk assessments. But absolutely do take into consideration, we don't rely on internal audit any longer because of the way that the standards have changed, but we do take into consideration the work. Hope that is helpful and clear.
Thanks, Andrew. Any more questions on the report? Okay, I've been listening, and so Clark, if you can advise us on proper process here. So I'm picked up. There's a concern about the slow speed of reaction of the organisation to some of the recommendations and issues arising from the report, and the root cause may be resources. I believe this is a governance issue, and I'm wondering whether a member of the CMT could make some kind of report to the committee on those issues, because they do seem to be long-standing, and maybe members of the committee would like to have the opportunity to hear what the actions are going to be and ask questions.
Chair, I'm sure that Stuart McKellar can come in, but the report is to note, I believe. But if there's any actions you specifically want them to take up and bring to the next meeting, certainly I think that's something Stuart could do.
Yeah.
I'd be very happy to bring something, Chairman, but I would request that that's to the September meeting rather than July. The July meeting is not that far away. So what I'd prefer to do is to bring something that has some clear actions in it rather than just a general update. And I think September is a more realistic timescale.
And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's an opportunity to bring things forward in a private session. Is that correct?
Chair, yes, you can discuss things at a private session, but they will have to come back to be agreed upon in a public meeting.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so thank you, Stuart. So we're going to bring things forward at the next meeting, next formal meeting. Oh, sorry, September meeting in September. Great. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, if there are no further questions, we don't have to vote on this. We just have to note it. So I'm going to say that the report is duly noted, and thank you very much to Sally for bringing that forward. Thank you.
Meeting closed, Chair. Yeah.
Okay, just remains for me to thank everybody for attending, and we're going to close the meeting. We pause for a few seconds while we